Hello everybody, Andrew Field here, and I'm really glad that with my school I was able to do spring break, but it went through really fast. There was a good amount that happened, so I'm just gonna get right into it. First off, the United States and its allies, Canada and the European Union, announced sanctions on several Chinese officials linked to the genocidal campaign against Uyghur Muslims. Myanmar security forces killed at least 200 people as protests against the military coup continue. The U.S. has sanctioned members of Myanmar's military for the coup, suspending the diplomatic trade agreement with Myanmar after how they're killing innocent civilians that are protesting the coup. A big trading ship was stuck in the Suez Canal for a long period of time, which caused major trade problems worldwide. It was one of the major shipping routes that was stuck, but thankfully the ship was able to be lifted and moved out of the way in a massive effort. I'm sure you may have heard, but in Boulder, Colorado, there was a mass shooting that happened. 10 people were murdered, one of which was an officer, 51-year-old Eric Talley. He was one of the first people to arrive on the scene. Officials say the suspect was in a grocery store, um, and was in custody. He also had a bloodied leg, um, and these people are lucky to be alive. I think, justice should be that they get put to death right away. There's no point in these people to sit in jails. I mean, they kill people, so I think the justice should be death. But he was injured while in custody. The motive for the attack was unknown. Witnesses reported the gunman to carry an AR-15 style weapon and wearing tactical gear. Um, I just want to say, I know a lot of people say, guns aren't the problem, people are the problem. And I get that, like, some people have mental issues where, if they're not mentally sane in their head, yes, they're more likely to commit crimes. But I don't think that's a valid enough argument to say that because the people aren't okay, that they need to get help, but they should be, that it's okay for all these guns to be on the market. I think that there needs to be some common sense gun reform, and now that Democrats control everything, they need to get it through. I'll talk about a problem with that a little later on. But I think, it's very obvious because the Second Amendment, since it's the Second Amendment, people, it's very hard to undo or change because it's so high, but people don't realize that when that was made in the Revolutionary War. The authors of the Constitution wrote that while they were fighting a war, or it was right after a war. It was soon after the war against England, and at that time also people were using muskets, so you know most of the time muskets missed. Now you're talking about assault rifles, and it's a very different conversation. um, I think that assault rifles personally should be banned. I don't see the point of anybody using an assault rifle unless it's military. In war, you talk about hunting, then you can use pistols or shotguns or snipers, but there should be no use of assault rifles in civilian hands, in my opinion. The supermarket was offering the COVID-19 vaccine, um, the supermarket that was shot up, so that could be a possible motive of an idiot anti-vaxxer. The investigation was still going on. The FBI got involved because it was a mass shooting. There was also a Virginia Beach shooting where 9 people were shot and 2 people died. Um, Senator Manchin, Joe Manchin, says he doesn't support background checks. He's basically a Republican. He doesn't support background checks, and the bill on background checks already passed the House, at which having some Republican support. And also more than 90% of Americans support the bill. Manchin also wants to keep the filibuster, um, which you know, it's just being used to, it's too powerful, and it's just being used to stall legislation that a majority of Americans approve. So I think I agree with Joe Biden's point of view that it should be limited, but if it's still too powerful, then it should be removed altogether. There was another shooting in Orange County, California. The gunman killed 4 people. A woman was also injured, and one of the people that was killed was a 9-year-old boy. There was a lot of shootings lately, and I'm guessing it's because things are reopening nationwide and we're getting through COVID. So people like these killers are going out more. So you have to be more aware, but it's really sad that we're hearing about this every week now. Big news in the Derek Chauvin case with George Floyd. Derek Chauvin, if you remember, was the officer that put his knee to George Floyd's neck and clearly killed him. There's video evidence and everything, and witnesses. Um, his trial began this past week. I think it's going into the second week. There's a bunch of witnesses that are being tried. There was another unfortunate incident where a U.S. Capitol police officer died. A second officer was injured after an attacker rammed a car into a security checkpoint in Washington, D.C. The officer that was killed was named William Evans, an officer who served 18 years in the police force. Um, the suspect, thankfully, this is a one good part of the story. The suspect was shot and killed because after he rammed a car and tried to kill the officers, the Capitol officers, he ran out of the car with a knife and was trying to lunge at the officers. So thankfully, they were able to shoot him before he was able to kill more people. Um, President Biden gave his first presidential news conference March 25th. There were 30 reporters there, plus photographers. They were all socially distant. And the Biden administration, the first talking point was talking a bit about COVID. He gave a bit of a speech before the reporters' questions. He said his initial goal before becoming president, was 100 million vaccine shots delivered in the first 100 days. And the administration did a really good job, and they hit it in day 59. So he set a new goal of getting to 200 million vaccine shots in the first 100 days, which is an amazing goal. That would be double his initial goal that he already hit. The current rate in the U.S. of vaccine shots, this was from a few days ago, so it may be a little bit above this, but it was at 2.5 million shots a day, which is really amazing to think about, that we are, as a country, vaccinating 2.5 million people a day. Now, that doesn't mean they're fully vaccinated, because it could be the 2-shot, so it means people getting the first shot, potentially, or if it's Johnson & Johnson, getting their 1 shot. So people were saying that the second goal is attainable, even though it's going to be pretty difficult. They invested $10 billion to get the vaccine to the most vulnerable communities, the Biden administration. A second goal Joe Biden had was getting all K through 12 grade schools open in the first 100 days. Nearly half of K through 12 schools, this is from last week, are fully in person. So he's getting there on that goal, but it's really difficult because there's a lot of pushback with that from teachers who are worried about getting sick. So teachers need to be some of the first people that are vaccinated after first responders. More than 100 million payments of the 1,400 stimulus checks have been given to Americans. The rest are coming soon. When asked by a reporter on solving other issues in COVID-19, his first response was saying how he's focused on COVID-19, with that being the main issue in our country by far right now, wanting to solve the other issues next. So about now, he's still focusing on COVID-19, but he's trying to work a bit more on other issues now, he was saying. He was saying Republicans should not be super partisan, which of course they are. Even though they don't control anything, they just like to cause problems. At this point, the Republicans in Congress. Biden said every year during the winter months, high amounts of immigrants come from the southern border. He said statistically, the Biden administration is trying to rebuild measures put in place that were removed from the Trump administration. Biden said the filibuster. Okay, with the southern border issue, I get that. So Biden, I guess, loosened the restrictions from the Trump administration, and that's allowing a lot of people to come in. Now, he said a lot of people come this time of year, but I think it's more than it was under Trump because his policies were really strict. So he loosened it, and now there's a surge of people coming, which is a bit of a problem because of the COVID. The U.S. is a lot worse than Mexico in cases, but you still don't want to have a lot of people coming in that you can't like test coming into the country. If there was a testing system, it would be okay. Um, but he was saying he was trying to get those measures that the Trump administration removed back into order. He said with the filibuster, like I said, that it's being used too much and it should be amended, but if nothing gets done in Congress and Congress stalls, that the filibuster should be removed. And I just want to say the reporters were asking way too much on immigration. I didn't see the whole press conference. I saw most of it though, or and with the press conference, I saw that several people were asking about immigration. The sad thing is that nobody was really asking questions related to COVID. He brought it up in his opening speech, but when it came to the questions itself, people were talking about other issues. And like I'm trying to say that COVID's not the only issue in America. Obviously, there's obviously gun reform that needs to be done. There's obviously immigration, racism. There's a lot of issues going on in America besides COVID. But COVID is the main issue right now because there's these mutant strains, especially. So where he's kind of racing against the clock because if the strains become the dominant form of coronavirus, it's going to be a huge problem. We need to get enough people vaccinated that it protects against these mutant strains that are coming from other areas of the world. So I don't think the reporters did a great job. Like, obviously, it's good to ask questions on other sections, but they didn't really ask much on COVID. So I think the reporters there kind of failed their jobs because obviously he's had to make COVID-19 the priority with what's going on in the country and the amount of people that lost their lives and jobs and livelihoods. So I think that it should have been where they were asking mostly on COVID-19, which is what he's been working on, along with other issues such as gun reform, racism, infrastructure is another one that he's planning to work on soon. So yeah, that's my take on that. Um, President Biden extended the Paycheck Protection Program. In a little bit of world news, Germany restricted use of the AstraZeneca vaccine from concern about blood clots. Now, they said that blood clots were extremely rare in people, and they're not exactly sure if it's linked, but just because it's possibly linked, Germany's wanted to play it safe. The CDC had great news saying in a guidance that fully vaccinated people can safely travel if they, like low risk, but they still can travel because they're vaccinated. Georgia Republicans recently passed a horrible voting restrictive law that tries to make it harder for people to go out and vote, and it's seen as racist. So the MLB did a really amazing thing. They responded by moving their All-Star game and the MLB draft from Atlanta. The Atlanta Braves didn't follow as justly as the MLB, but I think it was really impressive that an organization like that, like the MLB, which is a big deal in America, decided to make those steps to not have big events in Georgia, trying to convey a message, which they clearly did, and they got a lot of approval for it. That they didn't stand for the voting restrictions that were put in place in Georgia, and they didn't want to go along with that. So they said that they were going to move elsewhere, where because also the voting restrictions law is trying to be put into other states like Florida by Republicans, obviously. Republicans, in a nutshell, are trying to restrict voting. If you are a Democrat, you are talking about getting as many people eligible to vote and enrolled as a voter as possible. That's what Democrats want. Democrats want as many people as possible to be educated and to be ready to vote. Republicans do the opposite because they know that if everybody in the country that can vote would vote, they would never win anything. except in like the really racist areas of America. They'd win those seats, but they wouldn't win most of the seats in the country. So what they do is they do everything to try and restrict voters and everything like that. But now it's going to a new level, close to what Jim Crow laws were, but just at least in terms of voting, because they are doing things. One of the things in there is that you can get in trouble with the law for giving people water while they're standing in line. And you're talking about Georgia, where in the summer when elections come around and it could be near 100 degrees, people could get arrested for giving water to people. It's absolutely insane. They're trying to do everything they can to stop people from voting, and it's really sick. Um, so good for the MLB. Representative Matt Gaetz, who is an absolute asshole and was a big Trump guy, denied a relationship with an underage girl because he's under investigation for alleged sexual relations with a 17-year-old girl. Um, really disgusting stuff. I hope that they get a lot of evidence for this guy because I believe it because he's a scumbag. So I hope that they get the evidence he needs and he is at least kicked out of Congress, and then we'll see what happens with the investigation. But I think at least he needs to be kicked out of Congress if they prove it to be true. I know it's kind of hard to be proved true, um, but if it does, he needs to be kicked out of Congress and needs to get justice under the law. A Pfizer study found it 100% effective for 12 to 15-year-olds, which is a big deal. There was also another Representative Tom Reed, apologized for sexual misconduct claims and said he's stepping down. He's not running for re-election in 2022. Or sorry, he's not stepping down, but he's not going to run for re-election. And I just wanted to end it up on a positive note. The U.S. economy added 916,000 jobs, which is a huge deal. The unemployment fell to 6% from the month of March. And just to show you how big of a deal it was, economists were hoping for big numbers, so they predicted 675,000, and the actual number was 916,000 jobs that were added in the month of March. So really good news. Hopefully it's a good sign of, it's a good sign, but hopefully it continues and snowballs of more people being able to work who want a job, and the American people just continuing to fight back against the virus. So thank you all for watching. I hope you had a happy Easter, and have a good night.